Hasta, mira. Okay. Good morning. Bon dia, buenos dias, good morning everyone. Thanks for attending. We are really excited to welcome you today. I don't know if the volume is a bit too loud. Is it okay? Okay. So we are really excited to welcome you today to this open door day of the Doctoral School at UPC. We know you are interested eventually in doing a PhD at UPC, so you've come to the right place. We think this is the best university where you can do your PhD, and we'll try to show you today. And for this, we have prepared a very exciting program, so you can see a bit what we are doing at UPC. In fact, we will start, this is the program of the day, we will start with a contest that is entitled Your PhD Thesis in 4 Minutes. In this contest, we will have 10 different candidates, which are PhD students at UPC, who will explain their thesis just in 4 minutes. This is a really difficult exercise to do because it's complex topics. The idea of having this contest today is for you to be able to see many different research topics that we are doing at UPC and to have a taste of the research that we are doing. I think it's important, you know, that we are a university on technology, engineering and sciences and architecture. And we are one of the leading universities in our country in recruiting research funds. In the last years, we have been the top university in obtaining funds from European projects. This means that the research that is doing in the PhD, during the PhD in the research groups has resources. And this is also something very important to take into account. So then after the contest, we will have a presentation to try to explain what can be the PhD experience at UPC. What does it mean to do a PhD? And in case you want to do it, what are the options at UPC and how should you start the process? Then, of course, during this presentation, the jury that will be assessing and rating during the contest will be deliberating. Then we will give the awards. And when we close the session, we will be able to share some snacks outside, and we will have different points of information so you can directly ask us questions. So we will have plenty of opportunity to do that. And without further delay, I know the first candidate is ready. We will proceed with the Thesis in 4-minute contest. The winner of this contest will be the selected person to represent UPC in the national contest that will take place just before the summer. So these are the 10 candidates in order of appearance, and we will start with the first one, who is Franco Benedetti Leonelli, and the title of his thesis and his presentation is Estrategia para el análisis de la fragilidad sísmica de estructuras existentes. He's doing his PhD in Ingeniería Sísmica y Dinámica Estructural. So please, you may come in, or you may come up. Sorry, I forgot to mention, you will see appear that on the corner of the slide, there will be a clock appearing that will indicate the time, so the candidates can know that they are right on time. So thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Bueno, Hola, en primer lugar, muchas gracias por la oportunidad hoy de poder compartir el trabajo que estamos desarrollando con todos ustedes. Entender la fragilidad, para todos nosotros, entrar, o cuando cruzamos un puente, cuando llegamos a nuestros hogares, cuando estamos en nuestras oficinas, pensar que las estructuras que están ahí nos van a proteger frente a acciones, como por ejemplo pudiesen ser acciones inesperadas como terremotos, es algo que está garantizado. Pero la verdad es que esto no necesariamente puede ser así. Entender la confiabilidad sísmica de estructuras nuevas es una tarea que es compleja, pero existen en la actualidad herramientas que nos permiten hacerlo de una manera con cierto grado de confiabilidad. Pero por otra parte, entender la fragilidad sísmica de estructuras existentes que tienen años de funcionamiento, durante los cuales han estado sometidos a procesos de envejecimiento y de deterioro, pasa a ser una tarea aún más compleja y desafiante. Si a esto le sumáramos que, además, el cambio climático puede estar generando que estos procesos de envejecimiento y deterioro se estén acelerando, nos genera que el problema sea aún más complejo. Por otra parte, también es razonable pensar que las estructuras existentes fueron concebidas, fueron diseñadas, fueron construidas y diseñadas bajo principios de diseño o códigos de diseño que ya no están vigentes, que tal vez promovían soluciones constructivas o detalles constructivos que en la actualidad están obsoletos y que además no necesariamente son compatibles con las estrategias y los modelos que actualmente se utilizan para analizar sísmicamente las estructuras. Bueno, dado este contexto, lo que busca esta investigación es intentar establecer un marco para el análisis de la confiabilidad sísmica de las estructuras existentes. Este marco se basa en una estrategia multiescala, en donde en primer lugar se intentará establecer de qué forma las técnicas constructivas obsoletas pueden inducir reducciones o limitaciones en las propiedades mecánicas de los materiales, de las secciones y de los elementos estructurales. Para además esto, combinado con, por ejemplo, los efectos del deterioro, entender cómo a esta escala las propiedades mecánicas pueden estar siendo reducidas. Esto se está desarrollando a través del planteamiento y validación de modelos analíticos que se basan en las leyes de la mecánica. La segunda etapa consistirá en entender de qué forma el cambio climático puede estar acelerando estos procesos, para de esta forma poder establecer escenarios probables de deterioro a los cuales las estructuras hayan estado expuestas en el pasado o bien estarán expuestas en el futuro. Finalmente, la última etapa de la investigación consiste en aglutinar y tomar todos los desarrollos anteriores y llevarlos ahora al último nivel de la escala de análisis, que es la escala de sistema, donde se analizará la estructura como un todo. En esta parte, tomando los desarrollos de las etapas previas, se integrará el peligro y la aleatoriedad natural de la carga sísmica para poder estimar la confiabilidad de las estructuras existentes a través del cálculo de una probabilidad. Y esta probabilidad estará asociada a cuál es la probabilidad que una estructura sometida de manera simultánea al historial de deterioro más la intensidad sísmica esperada pueda alcanzar un determinado nivel de daño estructural o inclusive el colapso. Para determinar esta probabilidad se establecerá o se intentará construir un objeto que en este caso se define como la superficie de fragilidad combinada, que es de donde se obtendrán estos valores de probabilidad que aglutinan todos los fenómenos anteriores. Bueno, esa ha sido la presentación. Muchas gracias y espero que haya sido de interés para ustedes.
Muchísimas gracias por tan interesante presentación. No lo he dicho antes, pero nos están siguiendo también muchos compañeros por streaming, así que bienvenidos. Welcome also to the people that are streaming on YouTube. And now our next candidate is Patricia López, and the title of her talk is Del laboratorio a la vida, cómo los hidrogeles están cambiando la medicina. Patricia está haciendo la tesis en el programa de doctorado en Ingeniería Biomédica y, por favor, bienvenida.
Hace muchísimo tiempo, la idea de volar era algo impensable, era imposible. Comunicarnos con alguien que está al otro lado del mundo, al otro lado del planeta, era algo totalmente imposible. Crear, cultivar, regenerar tejido dentro del propio cuerpo humano era algo imposible. Hasta ahora. En los próximos 4 minutos, alguien en algún lugar del mundo va a sufrir una herida, un daño, y su cuerpo no va a poder curarlo totalmente. En los próximos 4 minutos, bueno, 3 y medio, os voy a contar cómo los investigadores estamos trabajando precisamente para cambiar esto. Tenéis que creerme, nuestro cuerpo tiene una increíble, una amazing habilidad para regenerarse, pero a veces sí que es verdad que necesita un poquito de ayuda. Cuando nuestras células y nuestros tejidos sufren daños graves, el proceso de curación se vuelve lento, ineficaz y muchas veces incompleto. Pero, ¿y si pudiéramos dotar a nuestro cuerpo de nuevas herramientas para que ese proceso de regeneración, de curación, sea mucho más rápido, más eficiente y además se cure con más fuerza? Pues ahí es justamente donde entra mi investigación. Chicas, sujétame la pipeta que hoy vamos con todo. Porque precisamente yo trabajo con hidrogeles. Dejadme que os los presente. Los hidrogeles son unos materiales muy suaves, muy esponjosos, que imitan lo que es la matriz extracelular, es decir, el ambiente natural en el que viven nuestras células. ¿Os suenan los términos alginato, colágeno, ácido hialurónico? Probablemente sí, porque sale muchísimo en los anuncios de cosmética. Pues ¿sabéis qué? Esos materiales además tienen la capacidad para regenerar tejido. Es decir, chica, lo que hace por tu piel también puede hacerlo por el resto del cuerpo. ¿Cómo? Dentro de tu organismo, estos materiales funcionan como arquitectos, guiando a las células para que puedan crecer, proliferarse y generar nuevo tejido. Y yo justamente estoy tratando de mejorar esos materiales. ¿Cómo? Bueno, pues usando péptidos bioactivos. Sí, que también sale muchísimo en los anuncios de cosmética. Son unas pequeñas moléculas que son capaces de conferir nuevas habilidades y nuevas capacidades a estos materiales, ¿vale? Y ojo, que los tenemos de muchísimos tipos. Puedes elegir péptidos que actúen como defensas para matar a las bacterias, péptidos instructivos que guíen a las células hacia el daño y sean capaces de proliferar y generar nuevo tejido. Y además, puedes combinarlo en función de lo que necesites para tu nuevo implante. Incluso colocar diferentes péptidos en un solo sistema, all in one. Y precisamente es en lo que yo estoy especializada. Yo estoy intentando de generar un hidrogel perfecto que tenga tanto la capacidad de regenerar tejido y de luchar contra las posibles infecciones bacterianas. ¿Sabéis por qué? Porque en ciencia no solo se trata de curar y de reparar lo que está roto, se trata de redefinir lo que es posible, porque esta idea hace mucho tiempo era impensable, imposible, hasta ahora. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Patricia. Veo que ni siquiera han hecho falta los 4 minutos. And we will now move on with the next candidate, who is Suleman Farouk Chowdhury, with the title Smarter Signals Teaching Wireless Networks to Think on Their Feet. Very interesting title. He comes from the PhD program on signal and communications theory. So please, welcome to the stage.
Hi, hola. No slides, so use your imagination. Picture you're moving in a bullet train, trying to connect to a video call. 1 minute, everything is fine, and the next second, your screen freezes, signal drops, frustration. Now imagine a self-driving car which is entering a tunnel. The GPS signal is lost, and in this scenario, even a half-second delay is disastrous. Why? Because it needs to communicate with the nearby vehicles, and it can collide if the signal is lost. Now the third example. A drone which is delivering life-saving medicine to a remote area. The drone is moving fast, the weather changes, and the signal drops, and the drone loses course. In situations like these, the communication is not an option. It's life-saving. So why does this communication system lose? Why do we have unstable connections. It's because the system cannot adapt with the changing environment. So this is where my research comes in. I'm designing a system which uses two signal waveforms. One is known as OFDM, I'll not go into the detail, and the other one OTFS. And I'll switch these two waveforms which best suits the channel or the environment conditions so that you never lose your connection. So how I am building this? I am using MATLAB to simulate real-world conditions such as rural environments, fast urban environments, and fast-moving trains to feed the data into the system with all these conditions and learn before the data is transmitted so that you never lose any connection. I'll try to finish it fast. Why my research matters? My research matters because while we are moving towards 6G, we are moving towards smart cities, drones, and fast communication, bullet trains. So we not only need to, the system does not need to work only, it needs to adapt. And the devices, they don't need to connect, they need to adapt. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, because it's another merit to do it without supporting slides. So thank you for your presentation. And now we move on to the next candidate, who is Jordi Domènech Fons, with the title Tècniques de ciberseguretat preventives i reactives per protegir els dispositius mèdics connectats. I el Jordi ve del programa de doctorat en enginyeria telemàtica. Benvingut, Jordi.
Sempre recordaré aquesta història. Va ser un 5 de març de 2023. Jo tenia la meva primera operació programada a l'Hospital Clínic de Barcelona. Sincerament, estava una mica nerviós perquè era la meva primera operació i no sabia molt bé com aniria. Quan de sobte tot s'atura. Les pantalles es tornen negres. Més de 300 intervencions quirúrgiques van quedar anul·lades i 11.000 visites, amb el que això comportava. Semblava l'inici d'una pel·lícula de ciència-ficció o de terror, però no. Allò va ser la realitat. Aquell 5 de març de 2023, l'Hospital Clínic de Barcelona va patir un ciberatac. I és que avui en dia els hospitals cada cop més depenen de dispositius mèdics connectats, el que anomenem internet de les coses mèdiques. Aquests dispositius presenten grans avantatges que ens ajuden a millorar la nostra salut, però també certs inconvenients de ciberseguretat que hem de tenir en compte. Segons un estudi recent, el 40% d'aquests dispositius presenten almenys una vulnerabilitat, amb el que això comporta. I si mirem aquestes vulnerabilitats a dintre de la categoria de CV, veiem que són normalment altes o crítiques. Això significa que qualsevol ciberatacant podria manipular molt fàcilment aquests dispositius, no només posant en risc la privacitat de les dades, és pitjor, la salut i integritat física dels pacients. I aquí és on entra la meva recerca. En la meva recerca estem investigant models d'intel·ligència artificial capaços de detectar aquests atacs abans que causin danys. Seguint la pipeline tradicional de desenvolupament de models d'intel·ligència artificial, organitzem els nostres grans objectius de la tesi, on en primer lloc hem de recopilar dades reals, dades importants per poder entrenar els nostres models. Per això estem elaborant i desenvolupant el nostre propi laboratori mèdic de dispositius IoT, amb dispositius reals, tràfic de xarxa real i també atacs reals. Amb aquestes dades ja podem entrenar el model. Bé, encara no, les hem de preprocessar. Hem de construir unes dades que el model les pugui entendre correctament. Per això utilitzem tècniques de preprocessament de dades, com ara selecció de característiques importants, tant de tràfic de dada com de tràfic de xarxa, com el contingut dels paquets. I un cop ja tenim això, ja podem entrenar el nostre model amb aquestes dades. Quins tipus de model utilitzem? Bé, n'hi ha molts. Nosaltres utilitzem normalment models basats en xarxes neuronals o també models basats en arbres de decisió. Depenent del cas d'ús, aquests models donaran millors resultats o pitjors. Per això els hem d'avaluar. Com els avaluem? Utilitzem mètriques àmpliament conegudes al nostre camp, com accuracy, precision, recall, F1 score i també el que coneixem com matrius de confusió. Les matrius de confusió ens ajuden a visualitzar molt bé com el nostre model es comporta a l'hora de detectar cada tipus d'atac, amb l'eficiència corresponent. Bé, i una vegada explicat això, segur que us pregunteu, però realment esteu salvant vides? Esteu detectant atacs, sí o no? La resposta és sí. Estem detectant atacs amb eficiències més altes del 75% i fins a 5 tipus d'atacs diferents, entre ells atacs de negació de servei i també atacs basats en el protocol MQTT. I segur que ara us preguntareu, bé, la ciberseguretat ja no és només protegir sistemes, sinó que és protegir vides, i així és. Avui en dia la ciberseguretat és protegir vides, i això ho sabran molt bé també la nova facultat de Medicina de la UPC, on metges i enginyers hauran de treballar colze a colze per fer que aquests sistemes siguin segurs des del minut 1. El coneixem com Security by Design. D'aquesta manera, quan anem a un hospital, de l'únic que ens haurem de preocupar serà del realment important, del físic, de quant de temps estarem esperant a la sala d'espera o dels nervis davant d'una operació i no de com ho haurem de fer per sobreviure si l'hospital pateix un ciberatac. Moltes gràcies.
Moltes gràcies, Jordi. Dóna tranquil·litat saber que hi ha gent com vosaltres treballant amb la nostra seguretat. El següent candidat és el Xavier Canal de Sabater, amb el títol de tesis Reaprofitament dels senyals satèl·litals per a l'ús sostenible de l'aigua, també del mateix programa de Teoria del Senyal i Comunicacions. Benvingut, Xavier.
Segurament heu sentit a parlar sobre el planeta blau. Li diem així perquè el 70% de la superfície de la Terra està coberta per aigua, però només un 3% d'aquesta aigua és dolça. És a dir, una petita part del nostre planeta és la que ens permet viure, i amb aquesta petita part som capaços de beure i cultivar els nostres aliments. I ara m'agradaria demanar-vos el següent. Imagineu-vos que us diuen que durant unes hores al dia no podeu fer servir l'aigua. És a dir, que vas a obrir l'aixeta i no en raja ni una gota. Sembla impensable, oi? Doncs això ja ha passat. Al Priorat, els veïns es van quedar sense aigua perquè la sequera així ho va permetre. Fa un any, l'embassament de Siurana es veia així, pràcticament buit. I fa només 2 anys, el canal d'Urgell, que és la infraestructura més gran de regadiu de Catalunya, va haver de tancar les portes per primer cop en la seva història, deixant milers d'hectàrees sense regadiu. I bé, ara em direu, a dia d'avui els embassaments estan plens. Sí, però que això no ens doni una falsa seguretat, perquè el que hem de veure és que aquest equilibri és molt fràgil, perquè quan hi ha sequera i falta l'aigua, la producció disminueix i, per tant, els preus pugen. I no només això afecta al món rural, sinó que quan els preus pugen, a tots ens és més difícil accedir als aliments. I és que cal saber també una cosa, que a nivell mundial el consum que fem de l'aigua dolça, la gran majoria és per al regadiu. I per tant és molt important que optimitzem aquest ús de l'aigua. I la meva tesi fa justament això. Intentem optimitzar l'ús de l'aigua. I ho fem d'una manera un pèl peculiar. Utilitzem els senyals dels satèl·lits, com els del GPS, per mesurar la quantitat d'humitat al sòl. Aquests senyals, que ens pot semblar curiós de primeres, quan també, a part d'arribar al mòbil, també han rebotat contra la terra. I aquest rebot no és el mateix si rebota contra un terreny que està més sec o si el terreny estava més humit. És per això que hem desenvolupat una electrònica molt específica que podem fer volar en aquest dron que veieu aquí el dibuix i hem dissenyat uns algoritmes que són capaços d'interpretar aquests rebots i treure'n la informació necessària que ens permeti identificar si el terreny estava més humit o estava més sec. I el més fascinant d'això és que hem vist que no solament podem caracteritzar aquesta superfície, veure com està la superfície, sinó que més enllà a les arrels, a més profunditat. I tot això d'una manera completament passiva, només escoltant els senyals que ja hi són, amb el reaprofitament. Amb aquesta informació, després podem anar als agricultors i ajudar-los a fer millors les seves decisions, que puguin fer un reg eficient, un reg sostenible i adaptat al nou sistema climàtic. És a dir, això vol dir, en definitiva, regar quan cal, on cal i amb la quantitat justa, perquè en un món amb aquest clima la diferència entre patir o adaptar-se és tenir la millor informació a temps. I ara us demano una última reflexió. Durant aquests 4 minuts, el pantà de Siurana, amb el consum que hem tingut global d'aigua dolça, s'hagués pogut omplir fins a 6 vegades. I és per això que és tan important aquesta ciència, perquè ens ajuda i ens dona les eines per entendre com funciona el clima. Moltes gràcies.
Moltes gràcies. Moltes gràcies, Xavier. Very important research also in this country, we know from the last years. Sorry, I went the wrong way. In this country, we know very well what it is not to have water, as Xavier explained, so very relevant work also. And now we move on with our next speaker, who is Siddanth with the title Development of Bio-Friendly Active Food Packaging Systems from the PhD program of Polymers and Biopolymers. So welcome on stage.
So, very good morning, everyone. And today you see me so distant, so well-dressed on the stage, right? But when I was a kid, I was not the same. I was too naughty kid for my mom. And one of the problems that I had was I used to waste a lot of food. I used to never eat my lunch completely, and my mom was so upset with that. One day, she sat me down and she told me that, you know, a lot of people in this world sleep hungry and they don't have food on their plate every day. This piece of information from my mom changed my life completely. And when I joined my graduation in polymer science, I was on this mission to reduce the food waste. And in my PhD, I am also doing the same. So if we come to the problem, a lot of food waste happens annually, every part of the world. Doesn't matter if it's a developed or a developing economy. And the problem, you can see $400 billion of food get wasted every year. And it's not just about the money. It's about food waste leads to other problems, such as generation of diseases, emission of greenhouse gases, soil deterioration, biodiversity loss. So it's not just a single problem that we need to solve. If we solve this, we can solve a lot of other problems too. Now you might be thinking that what is so new that what I'm doing, right? There are a lot of packaging systems that are already in the market. So I will give you a comparison among all of them. First, we come to the conventional packaging systems, right? We use polyethylene films. They are very strong, very good to use. The problem is they are not degradable. They take hundreds of years in the environment to degrade. Second, we come to edible packaging. Very innovative. You can eat the packaging. Amazing. But the thing is that they don't have a very good shelf life. They are not durable. And they are also allergenic. Third, coming on to the biodegradable films that we are using right now. It's in trend. But the biodegradable films have a problem. They are the passive sort of packaging system. And what we are trying to develop is an active packaging system. Now I will try to differentiate between passive and active packaging. So passive packaging system is basically like a boyfriend. Imagine a relationship. So a boyfriend tried to protect his girlfriend from all the bad things from outside, right? That is a passive boyfriend. We don't need it. We need an active one. An active one just not protect his girlfriend from outside, but try to remove the bad qualities from the girlfriend and give her all the good qualities that he can. So try to improve her a lot, and that is what we are trying to develop. We are using something known as metal organic framework. I will not go into the science, but metal, for the metal part, we are taking something potassium, calcium, and for the organic part, we are taking a molecule known as cyclodextrin. And we are making a very organized structure, as you can see, which is completely biocompatible, biodegradable, non-toxic in nature, and is very safe to be used in food packaging. This porous structure has the capability to incorporate essential oils, can be oregano essential oil, clove essential oils, and these essential oils provide antimicrobial and antibacterial properties to the system. When we use these kind of system in the packaging, you can see where we have not used the system in the control, after 15 days, the mangoes starts to degrade, right? But when we have used this packaging, after 15 days, the mangoes are still there, they have not degraded, and they have extended their shelf life. Through our work, we are also targeting a lot of sustainable development goals. As you can see, at the end, I would like to say that science is doing its part to reduce the food waste. You should do yours, because a lot of people in this world are still sleeping hungry. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Very interesting, and a very interesting analogy also. So the next candidate is Carles Pàmies Sauret, and the title of his presentation is Cadirats Gòtics Espanyols. He comes from the doctoral program en Patrimoni Arquitectònic, Civil, Urbanístic i Rehabilitació de Construccions Existents, from the area of architecture.
Bon dia, buenos días, good morning everyone. Recordeu la vostra habitació d'adolescent? El llit, l'ordinador, els pòsters, la música, el llit sense fer, la roba per terra. Imagineu poder tornar en aquesta habitació en aquell temps. Doncs això és el que estic fent jo, però no ho estic fent en la vostra habitació, ho estic fent amb cadirats de catedrals gòtiques. Mireu, quan era adolescent tenia un laboratori fotogràfic i feia l'ampliadora i els líquids, tot això feia fotografies. Anava a fer fotografies d'arquitectura, de retrats, paisatges. I amb això un dia em va caure a les mans un llibre que deia Cadirats gòtics. Dic, mira, això és interessant. I a Barcelona n'hi ha una. Vaig anar a la catedral, vaig obrir allò, el cor aquell, i allà hi ha cavallers jugant al hoquei, jugant al ping-pong, hi ha donzelles festejant amb cavallers. Hi ha tot un ventall de l'edat mitja, gent de l'any 1300 i 1400 fent tot allò. Dic, ostres, això m'interessa molt, vaig fer una mica d'introspecció, estudi. No hi havia res. Llavors vaig demanar permís i em van dir, sí, pots fer fotografies. Llavors vaig anar i vaig fer un catàleg, totes les figures que hi havia allí, centenars de figures. I això em va animar. Llavors vaig anar cap a Extremadura, que també hi havia un altre cadirat allà, molt interessant, també el vaig fer. Anava fent algun cadirat d'aquests, però hi havia alguna cosa que és, clar, és pla, queda bé, però i aquí és on la tecnologia va venir i em va ajudar. Va aparèixer la fotogrametria. La fotogrametria volia dir que en comptes de fer una foto de cada peça, em feia moltes fotografies. Llavors creava, processant-les, creava una imatge 3D de cada peça. Però no només això, sinó que a més podia fer centenars, milers de fotos i fer tot el lloc, tot el cor. El que es diu un bessó digital. Llavors, què fèiem amb aquest bessó? O què podeu fer amb aquest bessó? Vosaltres, a part de la conservació del patrimoni, que queda plasmat tal com està, podeu des de qualsevol lloc accedir a un d'aquests cors, moure's per allà sense anar-hi, com a l'habitació d'adolescent. Però, a més, diguéssim que també podria ser un recorregut virtual real. I també es podrien reproduir les peces, una per una, amb fresadora, amb tecnologia CNC, de manera que si es crema, com va passar amb Notre Dame, es podia recuperar peça a peça tot això. Tot això m'ha anat animant. I la meva feina, a part, ha portat altres camps, altres treballs d'investigació. Per exemple, hi ha cadirats que ja no existeixen. El cadirat de Girona està dispers, l'he juntat i l'he reposicionat virtualment, de manera que es pot tornar a veure en el centre de Girona. El cadirat de la Seu d'Urgell estic intentant refer-lo perquè està a Califòrnia, va acabar al Castell Hearst de Califòrnia, també, virtualment intento recuperar-lo. Altres coses. Enguany he fet una captura digital de la font de Jujol, de la plaça d'Espanya, i de la maqueta de Jujol que tenia prèvia a la construcció, amb la qual els núvols de punt s'ajunten i es veu la diferència entre el projecte i el monument acabat. D'acord? I producció digital. La producció audiovisual també es converteix en virtual últimament. Doncs darrerament també faig feines d'aquestes, que no són ben bé cadires gòtics, però sí que té a veure amb la fotogrametria. Ara mateix en cartelera hi ha una pel·lícula que els fons són virtuals, que els he fet jo. I ja està, fins aquí.
Moltes gràcies. Thank you for keeping in time. And very interesting to know that we can see the things in their right place from where they were foreseen to be. And the next speaker is José Enrique Domínguez Vidal, with the thesis title La intención humana y su uso en la interacción humano-robot, from the doctorate program in automatics, robotics and vision. So welcome on stage.
Como buen gallego que soy, cuando me preguntan de qué va mi tesis, suelo contestarles con otra pregunta. ¿Qué es la intención? ¿Cuál es la definición de intención? Sé que hay una definición ahí, pero pensadlo. ¿Existen distintos tipos de intención? Y si es así, ¿podemos clasificarlos? La disciplina que más se ha interesado por estas preguntas es la psicología, aportando distintas definiciones para el concepto de intención. Entre ellas, la que he encontrado que es más completa y al mismo tiempo útil en la práctica es esta. La intención es el deseo de obtener un resultado creyendo que ciertas acciones conducen a ese resultado. Sin embargo, cuando uno busca una clasificación, ni siquiera la psicología tiene una respuesta clara. Y aquí es cuando podéis preguntarme, vale, muy bien, pero ¿para qué vale todo esto? Para los que seáis más futboleros, la intencionalidad es tan relevante que es la que puede determinar si una falta grave debe ser castigada con tarjeta roja o solo amarilla. Igualmente, en un proceso judicial, la intencionalidad es tan relevante que su presencia es un agravante y su ausencia un atenuante. Del mismo modo, solemos discutir con nuestra pareja, nuestros padres o nuestros hijos por malentendidos. Esto es, porque no entendemos la intención detrás de sus acciones o palabras. Falla la comunicación de nuestra intención. Esta es la razón por la que los coches tienen intermitentes, para evitar accidentes cuando no podemos hablar o hacernos gestos, que es lo que solemos hacer cuando necesitamos coordinarnos. Y ahora, el caso que a mí más me interesa. En el contexto de una sociedad cada vez más envejecida y en la que empiezan a aparecer sectores con escasez de mano de obra, ser capaces de definir, clasificar y entender nuestra intención es lo que en mi tesis postulamos como las claves para permitir a un robot ser más humano. Para ello, hemos llevado a cabo 3 acciones principales. En primer lugar, hemos hecho una clasificación de la intención humana, intentando catalogar los distintos tipos que pueden aparecer. Por ejemplo, no es lo mismo tener intención de ir a cenar a un restaurante que tener intención de cambiarme, coger el coche o el metro o ir andando hasta el restaurante, porque se puede ir andando, y pedir una mesa. La primera sería una intención orientada a gol, mientras que la segunda serían intenciones orientadas a implementación. Igualmente, no es lo mismo lo que yo pretenda hacer al bajarme de esta tarima que lo que yo tenga intención de hacer la semana que viene. La primera sería una intención a corto y la segunda una intención a largo plazo. También se puede distinguir entre intención consciente e inconsciente, entre muchas otras categorías. Hecho esto, hemos desarrollado un modelo teórico que nos permite describir con ecuaciones matemáticas lo que la psicología nos cuenta con palabras. De modo que podamos primero clasificar esta intención y, hecho esto, cuantificar numéricamente esta para poder utilizarla en la toma de decisiones del robot. Y a su vez que éste pueda observar sus acciones y comprobar si tienen o no algún efecto en nuestras intenciones, cerrando así el ciclo. Finalmente, hemos llevado este método, este modelo, a distintos casos de uso. situaciones en las que el robot nos puede ayudar o simplificar la vida. Y en todas ellas hemos comprobado que existen mejoras significativas, tanto objetivas en el rendimiento de la tarea como subjetivas en la percepción que el humano tiene del rendimiento del robot. Esto incluye su confianza en el robot, la inteligencia percibida del robot o el grado de confort trabajando con él, lo cual parece indicar que vamos en la dirección correcta. Para finalizar, a aquellos temerosos de que la inteligencia artificial nos quite el trabajo, les propongo una solución. Combinemos la técnica, la física, las matemáticas, la ingeniería, con las humanidades, la psicología, la sociología, la ética, para que nos entienda y pueda colaborar con nosotros. Gracias.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. Very interesting to see how very different disciplines like psychology and robotics and AI interact. So now we move on, and the next candidate is Andrea Alexis Milón Ceballos, with the title Cambio del paradigma en la rehabilitación de estructuras gracias a la fiabilidad del programa de doctorat en Enginyeria Civil. So thank you and welcome on stage.
Okay. Imaginad el Hotel Arts, cerca al mar, trabajando y funcionando de una manera correcta y acogiendo a miles de visitantes de todas partes del mundo. Pero esta vez con la información de que este hotel fue construido hace más de 25 años. Ahora bien, en unos años, ¿qué deberíamos de hacer? ¿Destruir o demoler esta edificación y construir una nueva sabiendo de que está envejeciendo? Seguramente, si vemos desde el lado de la seguridad, la respuesta tendría que ser que sí, ¿verdad? O tal vez no. Así como este hotel, más del 70% de estructuras metálicas, como puentes, naves industriales y mismas edificaciones, están llegando a sus últimos años de vida útil teórica. Pero podrían aún seguir siendo funcionales si se evaluaran y se rehabilitaran de una manera adecuada. Hoy en día, el sector de la construcción es la mayor actividad económica individual y representa más del 10% del PIB de la Unión Europea. Pero también es el responsable del 40% de las emisiones de CO2. Entonces, cuando sustituimos infraestructuras existentes sin haber evaluado previamente de manera rigurosa, lo que estamos haciendo es generar enormes costos económicos, millones de dólares, millones de euros, y también generando toneladas innecesarias de CO2. Y esto, seguramente, y en la mayoría, se debe al excesivo conservadurismo que se da cuando se utilizan métodos de cálculo estructural que, valga la redundancia, son muy conservadores, costosos y poco sostenibles. En general, todo lo que he podido explicar es un gran problema, pero yo tengo la solución. Mi investigación propone una manera de gestionar diferente las estructuras existentes, nuestras estructuras, estimando la vida útil remanente de estas con la finalidad principal de rehabilitarlas, no reconstruirlas, basadas en una metodología que se basa, valga la redundancia, en la fiabilidad estructural, integrando 3 herramientas fundamentales, que son, primero, métodos avanzados de diseño, con lo cual podremos analizar las estructuras de manera holística, considerando ciertas incertidumbres en el material o en la geometría. Segundo, el monitoreo estructural en tiempo real, que gracias a avanzadas tecnologías podremos aplicar o considerar sensores por toda la estructura para así recibir información de esta al instante. Así, por ejemplo, como el sistema nervioso trabaja en nuestro cuerpo. Y por último, el análisis del ciclo de vida, que esta herramienta servirá para poder comparar el impacto ambiental y el impacto económico que se puede dar entre rehabilitar una estructura existente o reemplazarla por completo. Así, las decisiones no solo serán seguras, sino también fiables y conservadoras con el medio ambiente. La idea es clara. Lo que trata mi investigación es dejar atrás el mito de que lo viejo es inseguro y abrazar a una nueva tecnología o a una nueva ingeniería moderna en la cual se tenga en cuenta no solo la seguridad de las personas, sino también el buen uso de recursos públicos y naturales. Y así, edificaciones como el Hotel Arts puedan verse de aquí a unos años, o no puedan verse de aquí a unos años como edificios viejos, sino tal vez como edificios inteligentes, resilientes y que puedan comprometerse y dar parte de su sostenibilidad al futuro. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much also for giving this sustainable approach to our buildings. So the next and last participant is Andrea Bragantini with the presentation AI-powered smart grids from the doctoral program in electric engineering. So please welcome on stage.
Not long ago, something quite unusual, yet very impactful happened in our lives. The food blackout, right? So besides all the discomfort, the discussion, the conspiracy theories as well, and also the self-reflection regarding how our lives should be interconnected with the progress and technology, there was one thing that has been clear, and it's that electricity and power cannot be taken for granted, at least not anymore. So I'm Andrea Bragantini, and I'm a fourth-year PhD candidate in electrical engineering. In our research group, we study pretty much everything around power systems. And in particular, in my team, we work at the intersection between data science on one side and the power grid on the other. So essentially, what we do is the smart grid, which is basically researching about how to improve the power grid to make it better, more efficient, with the help, thanks to digital technologies. Okay? In the last few years, I would say 20 years, things have been changing a lot. Imagine a city where everything is connected, from solar panels, electric vehicles, smart batteries, houses, and well, this creates a complex web of energy flows. Look at this, from generation down to transmission, down to distribution. I put the color for you, so make it easy. It is difficult to make a sense out of this, also for the system operator, because with many more assets, the power system becomes also more fragile. Okay? Be aware that the successful management of this grid would be a crucial step in the transition towards a more sustainable future. But unfortunately, there are some problems. For example, look at the distribution. It's very complex. It's the biggest one, the one that delivers powers to our homes. Okay? These grids are typically blind. So this means that we cannot really locate the energy flows. We don't know where energy is produced or used. And these guys here in the control center, they are trying to do their best for us, but they have some limitations, like economical and technical as well. They don't really know what's happening sometimes. They do measure something, but not all the times, okay? And we want to help them somehow. So how? Well, my research is focused on developing AI-based systems that can somehow see what's happening in these grids without the need for installing expensive measurements and also expensive measurement infrastructure. So the idea is that to take advantage of the few data available and the measurements to train artificial neural network models that can understand the power system dynamics and the operation of the power grid. Okay? In this way, they can provide state estimates, and the system operator can use those estimates in order to monitor the system. Okay? It's just about basically leveraging the generative power of AI to create measurements where these measurements does not exist. So basically, my technology provides low-cost and low-effort grid observability to the system operator. And what you can do with this? Well, a lot of things. You can, for example, detect energy frauds. You can improve the quality of supply. You can reduce outages and even improve maintenance, integrating more renewables, for example, in the power grid. So in the end, it's just about reducing the overall cost for everyone. And this is in a few words what does it mean to create the smart grid. And that's what I do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All the candidates that presented. it doesn't seem so. You might think, well, it's just a short 4 minutes presentation. In fact, summarizing such complex topics as the ones you are dealing with in the thesis just in 4 minutes requires much more effort, I would say, than preparing a half an hour or 1 hour conference. So thank you for this effort and for the excellent presentations that you made. And now I would like to invite the jury to retire to discuss and try to decide in a while which will be the 3 candidates. So we will be awarding a 3rd prize, a 2nd prize, and a 1st prize. And now we will move on to the next part of the program, which will be on the PhD experience at UPC. In fact, you saw with all the presentations of our candidates that there are many different topics of research here at UPC, from artificial intelligence to architecture, biomedical engineering, robotics, civil engineering. So a broad number of topics, all of which are included in the different doctoral programs that we have here. You saw that many of them are interdisciplinary. It's more and more that we need to use tools from different disciplines, and this is what they are doing. So with this, I would like to introduce on stage the Deputy Director of the Doctoral School, Luis Jofre, who will give this presentation.
Thank you, Cristina. Well, first of all, thanks all of you for coming today to the Jornada Portes Obertes de l'Escola Doctorat. So as Cristina was saying, I mean, the idea now is to give a kind of a presentation of what a PhD is in terms of experience, what it means, what it entails, and what is useful for, in some sense. Okay, so let's go for it. So the PhD experience, specifically at UPC. I will try to also make it kind of general, not just for UPC, but it is true that at some parts of the presentation, I'll be talking about the specific details of doing the PhD at UPC in terms of logistics and bureaucracy. Okay, so let's go for it. So the idea of the presentation is somehow organized in 4 main parts. The first one is kind of introducing UPC to you in terms of what it means, and then the idea of research and innovation, which is directly linked to a PhD thesis, and then a little bit of the paperwork or the path that is required to do a PhD at UPC, and finally, although it's far from you guys right now, but what to do after a PhD. Okay, what are the options to progress in your career? Okay, so let's start with the first part, UPC today. So let's put some numbers of what UPC is at present. Okay, so basically, as Cristina mentioned before, UPC is the university that somehow leads the engineering, architecture, and sciences and technology areas in Catalonia region, for example. And I would say that it's one of the top ones in Spain for sure, and Europe also. Okay? So let's put some numbers. Okay? So how big it is? So more or less we have around 65 bachelor degrees, going from, let's say, I don't know, civil engineering, industrial engineering, biomedical sciences, architecture, telecommunications, etc. All the fields of engineering, technology, and architecture are somehow taught at UPC. We have around 84 master degrees, 45 of them in English, so more or less 50%. And the idea is that after that, there's also kind of a post studies in the sense of continuum education, around 240 programs in that line. So this is more or less the picture about UPC, and the idea is that UPC is organized in schools. Okay, typically technical universities are organized in schools, and UPC is more or less the same. And we have 18 schools somehow spread over the Barcelona area. Okay, Terrassa, Manresa, Barcelona, Vilanova, Castelldefels, etc. And yeah, in 7 different cities. Okay, And the idea is that today we are going to be talking about one of these schools, which is the one dedicated to the doctoral school, the doctoral program. It is, we have some sort of a physical place in which the school lives, and is here very close in Nexus 2, or Vertex, which is the one which is kind of it's a Windows-like building that you guys can find here if you go to Diagonal. Okay, so in terms of the doctoral school, how is it organized? So the doctoral school at UPC is organized in 48 different programs. These programs are somehow dealing with different areas of knowledge. To give some examples, so there will be a PhD program on biomedical sciences, a PhD program on architecture, or several programs, a PhD program on telecommunications, etc., 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 fluid mechanics, etc. And we are dealing more or less with a sustained, let's say, amount of 2,000 students enrolled. Okay, and the idea is that approximately 300 PhD theses are defended every year. This is just to give a sense of how big the doctoral school is. And the idea is that typically these PhD theses are conducted within research groups. So UPC at present has 140 research groups. And the idea is that approximately 2,300 papers are published every year. And one of the key things, or one of the most, let's say, important parts at UPC is the number of research projects that we deal with. Okay, so UPC is one of the top universities in Spain in terms of acquiring funding, both from, let's say, national and European agencies, and with the aim to go from, let's say, fundamental research to somehow applied solutions. So to give some numbers, for example, right now there are 906 research agreements and projects. Okay, and if we talk in terms of how much money that means, it means that UPC somehow is able to acquire 80 million euros this year connected to research projects. In that case, as it is described here, UPC is, I would say, I don't know if it's, I would say top 3 universities in Spain in order of getting funding from the European program. Okay, so what else? So, well, part of the research that is conducted during the PhD, some of it is then performed in collaboration with research companies. For example, 2,800. There are, like, every year around 13 patents registered. And the idea is that every now and then there are spin-off and startups that are created based on the PhD research that somehow, or maybe some of you will do in the future. Okay, then after the PhD or after a master at UPC, so, well, we can say, and we are very happy to say, that 95%, let's say over 90% of the students, they are able to find jobs in a somehow quick time, so that's very interesting in that sense. And the idea is that there are international cooperations around Europe and the world, in this case 227, and a very interesting indicator is that more or less 50%, 55% of the doctoral students are from outside Spain, Europe, Asia, and the Americas, and Africa. Okay, so then I would like to talk a little bit about this Unite, let's say, enterprise, which is a collection of universities in Europe that they have organized together, a group that is easy to interact between these universities and to conduct research stays or to do double degree diplomas or double, let's say, PhD studies. To give some examples, so here in Spain, UPC is the one selected. Then we have Universidad de Lisboa in Portugal, or KTH in Sweden, in Italy, Torino, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so this is kind of a network of universities for which is easy to interact with. And then, so a little bit, let's go to the main part of the presentation. So why would you guys be interested in doing a PhD, and specifically a PhD at UPC? So let's try to motivate it somehow. Of course, it's super biased, but that's more or less why you guys are here. But I'll try to first talk about what is the motivation behind a PhD in a general sense, and then I will talk about the advantages to do it at UPC. So let's go. So let's start first talking about what's the idea behind a PhD. Okay, so all of you, okay, years ago, or not so many years ago, you guys went to middle school, high school, then after high school you guys had to decide what degree to take, a bachelor, and now you also guys have to select a master degree, and after that what? So there are many options, and one of the options is to continue your education in what is called a PhD, to obtain the degree of a philosophy doctor. So as you guys can see, this is, let's say, the maximum level of education that you can get in a university. And for that, what it means is the following. Imagine that this circle represents, let's say, the frontier in knowledge in any discipline that you want. This is what is known, okay? So what does, so what does a PhD mean? Well, okay, first you do primary school, high school, degree, bachelor, master, and then you say, okay, I'm at the master position, what do I do? You guys can directly go to a company and start working for the rest of your life, that's an option. Or you can say, well, let's stop a little bit. Why not dedicating 3-4 years to do a very specific, let's say, work on a topic that somehow will allow me to do several things. First of all, I will become an expert on a very, let's say, specific topic. Second of all, I will learn how to, let's say, solve problems, and I will learn how to become independent and also how to solve very complex problems. To me, that's the more important part of doing a PhD. So choosing the specific area, of course, is very, very important, but what a PhD will allow you guys to do is to have time to learn how to solve complex problems. Okay, just to give you an example. So what does that mean? So it means that when you do a PhD, you focus so much, and for 3-4 years, so you have to think that for 3-4 years, every day of your life, you're gonna be, let's say, targeting a specific goal. That gives you with a lot of, say, time to really go deep into the study that you are doing and to propose very, let's say, novel ideas. Okay, so a PhD, you choose a specific topic and then you try to push the frontier of this topic. The first years, of course, you have to learn what is out there, so you have to get close to this frontier, and then by the end of your PhD, somehow you have to be able to propose a new solution to understand something that was not understood, some physical phenomena, etc., and with that contribution, you help the knowledge to be expanded. Okay, that's more or less the philosophical idea behind a PhD. The ultimate goal is to try to expand the frontier of knowledge, both in terms of fundamental research or in terms of applied solutions. Okay, that's the idea of a PhD, and this illustration somehow summarizes this path towards a PhD. Okay, and this can be, of course, connected to, for example, new energy sources, new building materials, as we saw before, new therapies in biomedicine, or if you like, let's say, applied math or physics, so a new theorem to demonstrate, etc., etc., etc. Okay? Okay, so, well, this is Christina's idea. So, well, now that somehow you guys are convinced that a PhD is a very good option for you guys, because it will help you somehow be able to solve complex problems, let's talk a little bit about the PhD path. Okay, so this is kind of a very good summary, just to somehow make it a little fun, of what a PhD student is and becomes. So typically, at the beginning of the PhD, you guys have a lot of energy, right? You are starting a new, let's say, a new step in your career, so you have a lot of illusion, a lot of energy, and everything is wonderful. And of course, after 3-4 years working on the same topic, deadlines and things like that, you may be or become a little bit burnout, but that's not always the case. But typically how a PhD goes is that there are, let's say, ups and downs, okay? But what is more important for you is to know that after some downs, there's always ups, okay? And that's true for, if you talk to any person that has gone through a PhD, of course, there's gonna be periods of this PhD in which everything is working and periods in which nothing works, okay? But just to try to break a little bit this, let's say, fact, let's put some light into it. Okay, so how is research organized at university? So most of you, or all of you, have gone through a bachelor and a master's degree, and of course you have interacted with professors at university, but more on, let's say, on the teaching side of it. But professors at university, actually most of our time, we spend it on research, or at least an important part of our time, we spend it on research. And let's see how this is organized at a university level. So there are professors, okay, part of our time we do teaching, part of our time we do management, part of our time we try to maximize it, we do research. And how do we do that? So we somehow organize people at different levels. So what is a postdoc? A postdoc is somebody that has done a PhD, has completed a PhD, and now is in a period of his or her life in which he or she is still interested in research and is trying to somehow extend the knowledge to either become a professor or to extend the knowledge to create a startup, a spin-off, or to go to industry, but a high level, let's say, position. So you guys have to, and that's, I always say the same to the students that start a PhD with me. After a PhD, your objective is not to do the work of a grad or master student. If you do a PhD, the idea, if you want to go back to industry, the idea is that you are going to be hired to become a leader in that company and develop new products, new solutions, or be, let's say, in charge of a group of people to do that. And that's something that for you guys is a little bit difficult to understand at the beginning. Because the typical question is, why should I now spend 3-4 more years at university to get paid the same? No, that's an error. The idea of after a PhD is that when you go to industry, you are a very high level, let's say, employee that is going to be hired to do top work at that company. And that's always true. I will give an example without names. When I did the PhD, there was a very good friend of mine doing the PhD at the same time. I decided to stay in academia. He decided to go to industry. Right now, and I'm not going to say a name, he's the, let's say, he's the team leader at MediaPro, developing GPU capabilities for media. Okay, he's in charge of 50 people developing products for MediaPro. This is the type of jobs that you guys will try or should try to achieve after a PhD if you go back to industry. Okay, this is just an example in what I do, but I guess this is very often the case in other disciplines. Okay, so there are postdocs, and then there are students. Okay, students at the grad, at the bachelor and master level that somehow help professors and postdocs to carry out research. But the glue to all of this are the PhD students. Why? Because PhD students somehow, so postdocs, sometimes they stay with professors for a year or two, and then they go to other places. Students, they do the master thesis, bachelor thesis, and they are gone. But PhD students, they remain for 3-4 years working on a particular topic surrounded by this group of people. And that's why PhD students are the people gluing all the system, because they have the time, the energy, and the capabilities to help and to develop the new ideas. Most of the time, professors, especially professors, we get lost with management and funding, but PhD students are the ones that really do the research and the details of the research. And that's why it's very important, and that's why it's very helpful for you guys, because you really get to do the things that become the new innovation or the new discovery. Okay? As I said, the PhD students are the glue to all this. And well, for example, as Einstein said, as a PhD, one of the main, let's say, difficulties for people to start a PhD is to say, well, maybe I'm not the one that should be doing a PhD. Forget about that. If you have already gone through a bachelor and a master, it's not, I mean, the PhD is just continuing your education. And what is more interesting is that you are going to have so much time to focus on a specific topic that you are going to become an expert on it. For example, Einstein said, I have no special talent. I'm just only passionate and curious about it. And that's the main idea behind a PhD. If you are passionate about a specific topic, the results will come. Okay? It may take 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, but the results will come. Okay, and for example, another, let's say, motivation about it is that we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. And that's part of the, let's say, the objective of PhD, to have time to think and to propose new solutions. And finally, and I like very much this quote, that genius is only 1% talent. Actually, 90% of it is hard work. Okay, PhD, it is true that it entails working every day on a sustained basis to reach a specific goal. Okay, so what are the qualities to conduct research? So, well, there are several ones. Okay, and a good PhD is that person that is able to balance the different aspects of it. So you have to somehow be able to understand papers, you have to be able to be creative enough to propose new solutions, but you have to also be able to manage your time. That's one of the main challenges, because typically nobody is telling you, do this by tomorrow, or you have an exam next week. No, it's like, okay, the supervisor most likely will give you a topic, a research topic, it will give you resources, a lab, or computing resources, or whatever, and then with the professor, you guys will say, okay, every week or every 2 weeks, we organize a meeting and we discuss how to move forward. So in this period between meetings, you guys are going to be the ones making sure that somehow organize your work such that the results move forward. And that's what I'm trying to say is that to do research, okay, one part of it is to do the research itself, but another part of it is to organize your time, disseminate your work, learn how to communicate your work, how to write, how to present, okay? And all these skills that you can develop during your PhD, it is true that if after your PhD you go to a company, these are very, let's say, sought qualities for this type of, let's say, high-level quality jobs. Okay? And as I said before, 90% of this is making sure that every day you try to move forward your topic of research and to advance. Okay, and etc. So finally, so after the motivation about PhD, which I really encourage you guys to do it, at the end of the day, if you think about it, okay, imagine that you finish your studies at 20-something years old. You have 40 to 50 years in front of you to work in a company. It's okay if you spend 3-4 years doing a PhD, right? At the end of the day, or even imagine that you do your studies, you finish at 20-something, you go to a company for 5-10 years or 20 years, whatever, and at some point you say, okay, I want to somehow get new skills, or I want to have time for myself to learn a new topic and to propose ideas on a new topic. You can always stop a little bit for 2, 3, 4 years, do a PhD and go back to industry. So right now, so maybe 30, 40 years ago, there was this, let's say, misconception that PhD was only to become a professor at universities. At present, this is just one of the many options that you have out there. Okay, actually, I will some details. Okay, so after my PhD, I went for a postdoc at the US. I spent 5 years of my life at Stanford University, okay, at Palo Alto. And I was doing a postdoc, 5 years, and I decided to spend half year of that period, and I worked at a startup company at Palo Alto. Okay, it was a company that now has been acquired by a bigger one, but at that point, that company, what it did was to develop software for performing physical flow physics analysis. And at some point, just to give an idea, we got a project with SpaceX, and I was the engineer that I developed the thermodynamical model that they use to perform simulations for the rockets that they designed. All that experience was great. And after that, I decided to go back to academia. And now I'm here in Barcelona and I'm somehow trying to transmit all this knowledge to other people. So what I'm trying to say with that is that please don't because typically this comes from your, let's say I'm going to be careful, with friends or family that say, what are you doing at PhD? Why do you want to become a professor? Forget about that. A PhD is much more than that. One option is professor, another option is to go back to industry, another option is to go to work at a research institute, and another option is to go to whatever you want to do. Take that time to, as a way to, let's say, learn very specific skills and transversal skills that will propel your career in the future. That's how I see a PhD right now. Okay, so a little bit about the PhD studies at UPC. Imagine that you say, okay, I'm convinced I want to do a PhD, so what do I need to do a PhD at UPC? Well, this is summarizing a little bit the idea of a PhD, that is not only about faculty positions or anything like that. So how is it organized at UPC? Well, as I said before, the doctoral school is here at Nexus 2. Okay, it's this building that is kind of very futuristic with windows. And the doctoral school is organized around 5 main knowledge fields. Okay, these 5 knowledge fields contain approximately 45 doctoral programs, and as I said before, this entails approximately 2,000 students. Okay, what are these 5 main areas of knowledge? So let's go in alphabetical order. So the first one is this area connected to architecture, urbanism, and construction. Okay, and there are different programs that deal with this area. The second one is about civil engineering and environmental engineering. The third one is industrial engineering, information and communications technologies, and finally sciences, kind of a more, let's say, fundamental programs. Okay, then imagine that you say, okay, but what specific programs are in each of these fields? If you go to the website, let's see if it works. The website, well, it doesn't work. The website is down there. If you enter the website of the doctoral school, you can go to this, there is one of the pages in which you can see these 5 areas, and you click on each of them, and you can see the programs connected to each of these areas. Okay, we have 45 programs. If you divide that by 5, well, there are like 5 to 10 programs per area, more or less, depending on which one you select. So I really encourage you guys to go to the website, and depending on what is your interest, click on any of these areas and then read the different programs that are available. Okay? So more or less, what is the path, right? So first of all, you have to ask yourself, okay, what are my interests? I'm interested in biomedicine, I'm interested in materials, I'm interested in civil engineering, in architecture, in flow mechanics. What is my interest? Once you somehow identify what your interest is, then you click in one of these areas, and then you can see the different programs. And inside these programs, you can see the list of professors that are connected to each of these programs. So then what you can do is, and you will see the professor and the email. You can contact this person, and then from there, you can start talking, or you can contact different professors at the same time. Okay, this is like a two-way interview. At the end of the day, finding your supervisor is a two-way interaction. There has to be, let's say, interest from both parts. Okay, and then once you have somehow identified the program and the professor, then you have to check the entry requirements for that program. Okay, and also it's important, if you want to get funding during your PhD, funding means a scholarship or a contract, you have to also organize that with your supervisor to ask if there are possibilities for that or not. Later I will talk about these opportunities, but that's something that you have to ask yourself. And finally, you have to do a little bit of paperwork in terms of submission of your proposal. The doctoral school and the programs will have to accept your submission. And then from there, the idea is that you start your PhD, and then you have 3-4 years, depending on the type of PhD program that you do, or let's say the type of PhD, regime that you choose, to complete the PhD. as I said, well, this is a website. You can see here, maybe it has been, this is the final one? It has been updated a little bit, but more or less the structure is the same. So you go to the website, you can click on any of these, let's say, main areas, and inside these main areas, you will see, you will see that, for example, for architecture, you will see the different programs. But if you click on sciences, you will see the same idea, different programs that belong to sciences, and the same for the other ones. Okay, so I really encourage you guys to do that. And now I think there is time for one of the videos? No, not yet. Okay. So admission. So one of the questions that you may ask, okay, so what are the periods for the admission? Admission is open all year, of course, except August. But the idea is that you can ask for admission all year long. Okay. Of course, this is somehow organized by the Doctoral School, but in connection with the coordinator of each of these programs that I discussed before. Then you will have to submit your application online, and let's say the person responsible for the coordination of that program will interact with you in order to say, okay, everything is more or less okay, or you need to also present these documents, or this and that. Okay, there is an interaction to make sure that the admission can be granted. So one thing is to be admitted to a PhD program, and the second part of it is the enrollment. Okay, enrollment is somehow being a student fully enrolled, and again, the periods for enrollment is open all year except August. Okay. Then about funding. So what are the options for funding? So when you do a PhD, if you want to dedicate, let's say, to do a full-time PhD, so you dedicate your whole day, like your 8 hours a day on a PhD, typically the idea is to get some sort of a contract or a scholarship. And that depends on the supervisor. Okay, if the supervisor has ongoing projects, funded projects, it may happen that he or she has money to do a contract with you, and then you have a salary for 3-4 years to do the PhD. That's one of the options. And the other option is to get funding through scholarships. So there are scholarships at the UPC level, let's say, at the Catalan level, at the Spanish level, and at European level. There are different, let's say, options. Actually, the list is long. If there are, let's say, 7-8 different options to get scholarships. Of course, these scholarships are competitive, typically based on your grades during the master and bachelor studies and your CV. But you can apply for these scholarships. These scholarships, they tend to cluster the submission deadlines around spring and beginning of the year. There are some of them that happen, let's say, after Christmas or something like that. But especially now, let's say springtime is the period in which most of these scholarships are open for submission. So if you are interested in conducting a PhD, now is the time to start looking for these options. There's going to be more options during summer and September, but now I think is when most of them concentrate. Okay, if you go to the website, actually, and you click on some of these links, you will see all the options. Okay, in terms of salary, all the options are more or less the same. Okay, there's an agreement between, let's say, UPC, Catalan, Spanish, and especially levels that all the scholarships are more or less the same in terms of funding. Okay, what else? There's another path to a PhD, which is the doctoral PhD, the Doctorat Industrial. Okay, this is some sort of a different path in which your PhD is tightly linked to a company. So when you want to do a PhD, a doctoral PhD, the idea is that you have to find a supervisor, again at UPC, but then the idea is to contact, typically through the supervisor, with a company, and then the idea is that your PhD is performed at UPC, but trying to solve a problem that is of interest to that company. And then these PhDs are always funded, I don't know now the details, but part of your funding comes from the company, part of the funding comes from the Generalitat de Catalunya. Okay, and UPC is more or less the driver of all this. For those of you that may say, well, I'm interested in doing a PhD, but at the same time I want to be connected to industry, this is a perfect option. right? Because most times what happens is that out of the 5 days of the week, you spend 2-3 days at UPC, 2-3 days at the company, and then you have this, let's say, double interaction in terms of academic research at UPC, but also interaction with your mates at the company. And most likely, most of the times, typically when you finish a PhD, the same company is the first one interested in hiring you to continue developing the whatever research you started during the PhD. Okay? So those of you that maybe are, let's say, more interested in the application of the potential research, this is a very good option. Okay? All the details, if you go to the website of the Doctoral School, you will see all the details. Okay? Now, yes. Now we have a video that will summarize a little bit part of it.
Quan vaig acabar la carrera tenia ganes de seguir formant-me i alguna vegada m'havia plantejat fer un doctorat, però no va ser fins que vaig veure l'oferta de doctorat industrial que em vaig decidir. El tema era interessant, innovador i, a més, la investigació seria aplicada.
Cuando me comentaron la existencia del doctorado industrial, me pareció una oportunidad genial que mezclaba poder investigar con poder ver cómo realmente funciona la industria. Me aporta mucho a nivel personal, me sigo formando, tengo un proyecto de investigación innovador en el que creo, tengo el apoyo constante de la universidad, pero a la vez veo el día a día de una compañía y veo cómo toda esta innovación se aplica o se intenta aplicar en la industria.
Els doctorats industrials permeten no només desenvolupar nou coneixement i eines, sinó també testejar la seva eficiència al món real i a les empreses. A part d'això, és una oportunitat única per conèixer quines són les necessitats actuals que té la societat i les empreses.
Teniendo en cuenta la gran transformación por la que está pasando el sector de automoción, ahora más que nunca la investigación es clave para nosotros. El programa de doctorados industriales nos permite conectar con el joven talento y llevar conjuntamente a cabo los proyectos estratégicos para SEAT.
Los doctorados industriales ofrecen una oportunidad magnífica para SEAT en muchos aspectos. Por una parte, atraer el talento con una motivación extraordinaria para afrontar proyectos de larga duración y de dificultad muy alta. En SEAT, la investigación, el desarrollo y la innovación han sido, son y serán pilares fundamentales para la empresa. Con los doctorados industriales hemos encontrado una forma de llevar toda esa innovación a todas las áreas de la compañía.
This program allows us to have very well-trained researchers to carry out strategic projects for the companies. In addition, doctoral students are an enabler for the transfer of technology and knowledge of the university.
SEAT em dona accés a recursos que d'altra manera seria més difícil d'aconseguir-los. A més, tinc el suport en tot moment de la meva tutora a la UPC i del meu tutor a SEAT.
Gràcies a aquest conveni, s'ha tingut accés a proves pilots que han aportat un gran valor a la recerca. A més, amb el finançament que s'obté es pot assistir a cursos especialitzats, congressos i conferències que enriqueixen la recerca i potencien les publicacions.
Nos ayuda también a reforzar nuestro compromiso social, dando la posibilidad de formar a jóvenes y eventualmente no tan jóvenes en estos campos nuevos de investigación, y también nos permite de alguna forma ser capaces de abordar proyectos en tendencias que son relativamente arriesgadas, porque un doctorado al final es resolver un problema que nadie se ha planteado nunca o que nadie se ha planteado nunca resolverlo de la forma en la que se va a resolver.
Okay, well, so this video somehow summarized a little bit the ideas that I was presenting before. So what else? What does a PhD, or what does UPC provide when you do a PhD? Well, in addition to, of course, resources in terms of laboratory, computing resources, etc., conferences, it also, from the doctoral school, we provide some sort of courses on transversal skills, what we call cross-disciplinary training, that these courses are updated year by year, but just to give some examples, So for example, there are courses about innovation and creativity, research management, also about career development. We also provide courses on how to write proposals. Once you get somehow closer to the end of the PhD, maybe you guys are interested in a postdoc or starting spin-offs or things like that. So the Doctoral School provides courses on how to write proposals or things like that. Also about, let's say, language skills, training, how to disseminate research, how to present, how to write, etc., etc., etc. Okay? And of course, and this is important, at the UPC level, there is what we call the international mention, that if during your PhD studies you spend more than 3 months abroad, let's say in some other country in Europe, then you get this international mention, which means that you have performed part of your research abroad. And for example, then if you want to go for postdocs or things like that, this is something that let's say, as a candidate looks very well. The Doctoral School also every year provides some funding or part funding to go do these research stays. Okay? What else? Well, the PhD experience at UPC, especially for those that come from overseas, the Doctoral School also tries to create kind of, let's say, fun events that help, somehow create a community of students at the PhD level. And every year we organize different, let's say, activities. For example, for Cagatio at Christmas time, or for San Jordi a couple of weeks ago, and also when we get closer to the summer, San Juan and things like that. Okay, so the Doctoral School also tries to connect you guys such that your stay at Barcelona, at Catalonia, is fun. What else? Well, a little bit about the PhD path, no? So there are 2 types of PhDs at UPC. What we call the full-time PhD, which is, that means that you dedicate your entire, let's say, work hours to do your PhD. Typically, then you have to get funding from a project or a scholarship. And then the idea is that you have 4 years to conduct your research. So typically, it doesn't mean that you have to spend 4 years. It means that maximum you have 4 years to do it. Typically, people dedicate 3 years and a half, 4 years to do the research. The last year, year 5, it is only somehow allowed if there's some sort of a big, let's say, motivation for it. So typically, you have to think about the PhD of 4 years, 3-4 years. Okay? And there is a second, let's say, path, which is a part-time PhD, and this is for people that somehow maybe they are working already in a company, but they want to conduct a PhD. Then you have more years. Then you have 7 years to conduct your PhD, plus this extra year in the case that there are big motivations for it. So keep in mind 2 options. The first one, full-time PhD, 4 years. The second one, part-time PhD. You have up to 7 years to complete your research. Complete your research means starting your research, creating new ideas, developing new solutions, and defending your thesis. That's what it entails. And this is more or less kind of if we want to summarize a little bit the ups and downs of your PhD through some, let's say, illustrations. Typically, when you start your PhD, you are super excited about it. Oh, I'm going to solve, I don't know, the energy crisis in the world. And then as you start working on your problem, you find out that, well, people that has worked on that problem was also very smart, and that trying to develop new ideas takes a little bit of time and takes a little bit of struggles. And that's more or less what these drawings describe, okay, these ups and downs, but that's part of the process and that's part of the beauty of it. From my personal experience, my PhD years for me were the best ones, okay, because I had time to focus on a research topic that was of maximum interest to me. So because when you are doing the bachelor or master's, typically some of the courses are of interest to you and some others are like, now I have to do this. But when you are doing your research, your PhD, you are working on the topic that you selected. So you are working on truly what you like to do. And of course, however you go through all these ups and downs, there is some point maybe at the second, third year in which you are like, wow, this is super difficult. I don't know how to progress. But that's more or less when your supervisor kicks in and helps you a little bit with guidance and with connections and collaborations. Okay, it takes time, it takes effort, but trust me, solutions always arrive. Okay, and by the end of your PhD, of course, you are very happy. You are a doctor. Okay, of course you cannot you cannot do surgery, but you are a doctor. That's my grandmother always had an issue with that. If you are a doctor, why are you not in a hospital? But well, I explained her many times, and I think that she more or less understood by the end. Okay. What next? And with that I finish. So what's life after a PhD? Before I go to the next slide, just keep this sentence in mind. There are many options. Becoming a professor is not the only option. Actually, I would say it's one of the least options, okay? So let's explore a little bit what's out there after a PhD, okay? So, okay, well, this is more or less let's say the transferable skills that you get during your PhD. You learn how to write, how to present, how to disseminate your work. You also become an independent thinker. You know how to solve problems by yourself. You know how to decompose big problems into smaller ones and how to reach a solution. You also learn, and this is very important to me, how to manage your time. You know how to deal with deadlines. And of course, you have created a network of people that can help you go to the next step, either if you want to do a postdoc, either if you want to go to industry, or if you want to stay in academia, okay? So what is a typical path? Imagine that you want to somehow remain in academia and become a professor. So typically you do your PhD, 3-4 years, and after that you go for a postdoc, most likely, let's say abroad, in Europe or in the US, and typically you do a first postdoc, maybe this postdoc gets extended in time and that's it, or typically you go for a second postdoc and that somehow covers the span of 2-3 years. Maybe this is too much, 2-3 years. But in that period, you get to know other ways to do research. You somehow enlarge your networking. And most likely in that period, you will get to know people that will facilitate your landing of a stable job in academia. That was my case, for example. Okay, that is more or less a traditional path, but there's much more than that. You can also do a PhD, you can go for a first postdoc, and then say, now is the time to create a spin-off. Now is the time to go create a startup, or now is the time to go to industry. Actually, at some point, I had to make that decision. Do I want to stay in academia or at the industry? Okay? And it may happen that you do a first postdoc, a second postdoc, and after that, you also decide to go to a company. That's perfect. There's no problem with that. Actually, to put some numbers to that, so for example, typically PhDs, when they finish, after some years, just to give some numbers, 35% are still in academia. 20% of them, they go to research institutes. For those of you that say, I'm much more interested in research than teaching, for me, that's the best option. Okay, if you say, I was born to do research institutes, okay? And there's some of you that you may say, well, now that I have acquired all these skills, I know how to solve problems, I'm an expert in a specific field, I want to become a leader in industry. So 45% of people go to industry, and they get to a very, let's say, high-level positions that allow them to also grow in that field, in that company. Okay, and that's something that I want to emphasize. Don't think about, let's say, think in larger terms. It's not only Barcelona. So once you have finished your PhD, you may find your, let's say, life in this world somewhere else, in the US, in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, somewhere else. So if you think in that level, trust me, a PhD is a very good path to somehow be go work outside of Spain. Okay, and finally, with this, I want to finish with a quote from Nelson Mandela that said, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Okay, and that's really true when you do a PhD. So that's it. Thank you for your time. Yes.
Thank you very much, Luis, for this very interesting presentation. And now we will move on. We will move on to the last part of this session, of this day. The jury of the contest is back, so I would like to invite the secretary of the jury to come on stage. So please, yeah, come. You may come in to announce. I know if you want to come here. I know it has been a difficult decision, hasn't it?
Yes, okay. After a long discussion among all the members of the jury, finally we have made the decision, and I need
Your
the
notes.
lists.
We can start with the third classified. With the third awardee, yes. Maybe we can. Dona'ns cada un el nostre, si no. Ok, vale. Però el tercer el dones tu. Ets el primer.
Okay, so finally appeared. The third, in the third position is Miss Patricia López Gómez.
Felicidades. Sí, anem tots al mig. Així? Més cap al mig? Okay, thank you. Congratulations.
Well, in second position, Jordi Domènech.
Moltes felicitats.
And the winner is José Enrique Domínguez.
Congratulations, felicidades. So, José Enrique, yeah, you can take the picture. So, you will represent us. You will represent UPC in the national final contest. So, more details to come on the date. And now we would invite all the rest of grantees one by one. We will name them one by one so they can come on stage and we make a picture of all the participants. I must say the presentations were really, really good, all of them. I am sure they had a hard time, so yeah.
Yes, in fourth position, Andrea Bragantini. In fifth position, Xavier Canalda. In sixth position, Carlas Pamias. In 7th position, Franco Benedetti. In 8th position, Andrea Alexis Milon. In 9th position, Siddanth Saxena. And in 10th position, Suleman Jordi.
Thank you all for participating. We will now take a picture of all together. So I don't know if we should compact a bit more. Okay. Well, I'm small, so I can come here and I don't. Yeah. Ah, okay, in the middle. Okay. We should follow the protocol. Oops. Sí, ya está. So thank you very much, all the participants. Thank you, of course, to the jury for being here and taking this hard task, because I know it was tough to decide. And finally, thank you, all of you attending today. Now don't go away immediately, because we have some drinks to toast outside, and we will be there to answer your questions. You will see there are a couple of tables with some materials, so just come to the different corners and ask any doubts. We are there to help. And for future, of course, now you know where we are, at the Doctoral School of UPC. You know the website. Any doubts, now you know us. So we hope to welcome you to UPC for the PhD next year. So thank you very much.